a lesson on functions, right? This can be, if we lay this down properly, this could be the foundation of which all Algebra 2 will come from. This is a great beginning. So how I like to introduce this is just talk about the human body a little bit and ask you guys how do your bodies function? You're a human. How do your bodies function? How does it function?
Organs.
Say again?
Organs. With the brain.
Organs. That's okay. So you're talking about operators, and we'll get to that. And we'll talk about organs. We'll get to that. But in order for your organs to work, what's a main product?
Blood. The brain.
Oxygen.
Bingo. Now oxygen we would say is a. Oxygen is. Well, you're breathing in, so we'll say that's an input, right? So we'll use oxygen. The last class they use food. So here you have oxygen, here you have organs, and then you have an output, right? Organs, and in this case, if we're working with oxygen, we're working with our
Respiratory.
lungs. Thank you. Respiratory. Stomach. You may breathe into your stomach. And then the output would be what?
Carbon dioxide.
I would say that's a waste. But it will be a product and output, but you breathe and that gives you what? That gives you food maybe gives you energy, but the oxygen does give it gives you life, it gives you energy, it helps you with what? Helps your pump circulation. So we could say energy, your brain functions, so it'll deliver. Your heart will deliver blood to your brain, so you get maybe blood circulation, and then you'll have an output of CO2. Yeah, so that'll be there too. So in math, we have this as a function, but we represent. What do you think we represent our input with when we talk about math? What is X? Very good. So that's our input. And then when we talk about operators, we talk about Y. Wrong. Operators. Be as wrong as many times as possible this year. Right? The more you fail, the more you succeed. Very simple. Right? Kobe succeeded quite a bit because he took a lot of shots, but there was a lot of failure that was involved with that. What are some operators in math? Plus minus. Multiplication, division. You can talk about something being squared or square root. These are operators. Another one, what's an operator? What about this? What is this? Absolute value. Good. Yeah, it's another operator. And we'll get back to that. And then your output. Y. And now what you'll notice is when we talk about functions, your output, or if we use an example like function, let's just say we use f of x, a function of x, which results in y. So technically, f of x and y they're the same, right? Now let's just throw a simple standard function in there, 5x plus 2, right? Here's our function, here's our output. We have operators, multiplication and addition. And then what we want to talk about, again, is our inputs and outputs. What's our inputs again? X. So for x, a great way to look at our inputs is -2, -1, 0, and 2. I like to use these because it shows us the negative side, it shows us a trend. So we're putting these inputs into our operators. Right? And I don't want to say 5 times 1. We're just going to look at these things. Well, we could say, okay, -10. I'm going to bring this up just because I like to share with you guys how I look at this. What's the difference between 10 and 2? 8. And what do we have more of? Negatives. So we call this -8. This would be -3, -5 plus 2, 2, 7, and here's our outputs. Okay? And here we have our inputs, our outputs, and then is there any pattern that we're noticing as this function goes along? Yeah, it's going up +5. Yeah. +5. All right, and this is how we kind of demonstrate the use of a function and their inputs and outputs. Now, go ahead.
I have a question. So, if there's no like pattern, can it still be a function?
Yes. But generally, when you work with a function that is a function, you'll see a pattern, which is a great question because that leads me into a discussion about domain and range. So actually, I'm going to need some space here, and I'm going to introduce to you guys, because we're going to talk about domain and range. Domain being your possible inputs. So domain is probably where you think would be associated with what, if we're talking about inputs? What do you think? With X, correct. So here we go. We're going to be talking about domain and range. Domain being, okay, what can I use as my possible inputs? And then with those inputs, what would be my range of outputs? Now, in order for me to demonstrate that, I like to introduce to you guys the cupcake machine. Okay, this is a great way to get an understanding of what is a function, how does it work. Here I have my input, here I have my output, and inside of that will be some level of operators, right? Some gears or whatever. So let's say I put in a cupcake mix. This is my cupcake machine. I put in we'll call it a +2. Actually, we'll just call it a number 2 cupcake mix. And this is my domain. Here's my input. It comes out, and I get a chocolate cupcake. We'll call it a number 7 cupcake, right? Chocolate cupcake. So if I put in a 2 into my machine, I get an output of what? 7. So I get an output of 7. Is there any possible way? Let's just say, and here's where the idea comes into play. Let's just say I put in a 2 mix, and I put in the 2 mix, I get a 7 cupcake. I put in the next bag, and a number 5 vanilla cupcake comes out. What do we know about this machine? It's not functioning properly. Something is wrong. There's no way you could put in the same thing and get something different. There's no way I can have the same input and get a different output. I can't have the same domain resulting in 2 different ranges. So what's a rule we can come up with that? I kind of just say, who can tell me what I just said? Give me a rule for that, yeah.
The domain can only result in one range.
Okay, the domain can only, well, let me test that. Yeah, the domain can only, yeah, you know what, that's true. Result in one range. What's another way to write that in a negative fashion? The domain can only result, or we could also say the domain can't result in 2 ranges, correct? We could say that as well, right? Now, what if I presented to you with this, right? What if I said, and I give you another, so I'm going to use a number 2 mix, boom, I got a number 7 chocolate cupcake. Okay, that works. And then I put in a number 5 mix. Actually, we'll call it a number 4 mix, because I used 5 already. I put this in, comes out, whoa, I got another chocolate cupcake. So we know this doesn't work. 2 domains giving us the same range. Now I've done 2 and 4, and I've put in a 2 mix and got a 7 cupcake chocolate. I put in a 4 mix and I've got a 7 chocolate cupcake. Is the machine functioning? It is?
No.
I could put in the same mix and end up with the same cupcake? Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's just like Stephanie going to, she gets a Betty Crocker chocolate cupcake mix, chocolate cupcake. She puts in the number 4 mix, but this time it's Pillsbury. I don't even know if they make, well, let's just say they do. And she gets a 7 cupcake. So here we had the same domain not giving us the same range, or we're not being able to give us a different range. Here we have 2 different domains giving us the same range, and this being okay. So what's a rule we could come out of with that?
2 different domains can result
2 diff
different
domains
can result in the
can result in same range. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Okay? You can input 2 different swings. So what's your name again? Omari could put in his A swing. We talk about that a lot, right? You can also 2-strike count, put up your B swing, and it could still result in a home run, right? But you can't put the same swing on the same pitch and one result in a double and one result in a home run. It's the same thing. It's the same. It should result in the same. Yeah. Now, what's one way? Let's say I forget all this. This is a little confusing. It kind of sounds the same. The same domain can result in 2 different ranges. 2 different domains can result in the same range. It kind of sounds. So one way because I'll forget this, or not forget it, just like, wait, what was it again? One way I remind myself where I check is I say, okay, I know there's this thing called a vertical line test, right? And what the vertical line test tells me is that, and this is what I did, I took an input and I say, okay, I want an input to give me the same output. I want that because I know that that fails the vertical line test. Meaning this 2 gave me a 3 and a 7. Or actually the chocolate cupcake was a 5. So this 2 gave me a 5 and it gave me a 7. It failed this VLT, vertical line test, right? And this is what tells me that this line is or is not a function. It is not a function because it failed the vertical line test. So if I want to create a set of coordinates that is not a function, if I want to demonstrate and show that something's not a function, I'll just create a set of coordinates that'll fail a vertical line test. And if I want to create a set of or 2 inputs, 2 and 4, right? The 2 mix and the 4 mix, and I want it to give me the same result, a 5 cupcake, I'll just draw a horizontal line. And this is where I showed that 2 different domains, 2 and 4, can result in the same range, 5. And it passes that vertical line test. Meaning, what is a vertical line test? A vertical line test means I could draw a line and it intersects only at one point. So if you ever end up with a graph, and we'll see in Algebra 2, not everything's demonstrated as a line. Maybe you'll end up with a parabola like this, and I ask, is this a function? Will you say no? No, Mr. Duffy. That is not, because that fails the vertical line test. Okay, and this is how I remind myself how to demonstrate something that's not a function, and how to remind myself that something is. Now you could have, that doesn't mean, right? You could have a domain of 2 give you a result of 0, and you could have a domain of 4 give you a result of 4. You could have 2 different domains give you 2 different ranges. Right? You still have that. It will pass the vertical line test. And this is the whole idea of input, operator, and range. And the idea of domain and range being what are my inputs and what are my outputs? And when I see those inputs and outputs, so a lot of times you'll see this. Function or not a function? Not a function. One domain giving me 2 results. Function, not a function. Function. Function or not a function? Function. Function. I have 2 inputs resulting in the same range. Now, as soon as I do this, what could I do to make this not a function?
If you put 3 with the 2.
If you put 5 with the 2 handle on.
I'll have 1 input giving me 2 outputs. It's not the same. Here you have 2 ranges pointing to 2 domains pointing to 1 range.
If you put the 3 with the 2, then it would be 1 domain giving you 2 ranges.
Oh, you could, yeah, there's other options. Yeah, this is not the only way I could demonstrate it to not be a function. I could point this 3 also at the 1, 2, right? And then that would also, yeah, absolutely. There's not, whatever you answered, if that was your idea, then that's what you had. So that's, all of that is your